Hello, I'm Jason Culp. I'm an application engineer here at Nord Technologies. Today I want to share the specialty tools we offer our loyal customers. Aside from Autodesk software, we offer sales and training for a plethora of different items to get from the planning stage to the as-built stage. I will run through the tools as they are displayed in the toolbar. First is the Flatten feature lines command. As we move on to this part of the demonstration, you can see we have a split screen with survey figures processed from the topo on top. If I zoom in, you can see that we show our curves and arcs as they should be. I will open up my properties menu so you can see that the survey figures are at real world elevation. I will adjust my screen so that we can view the points and line work together. Now we'll go to the Nord Tools toolbar to select the Flatten Feature Lines command. The first option in the command line is to delete selected polylines. This would be the survey figure lines. Once I have made my choice, I want to select the lines to be flattened. After I select the lines and hit enter, you will start to see the line work being processed at zero elevation. As this process is, take notice that the layers on the new lines remain on the same layers as the original line work. Also, the line work in real world elevation remains intact. This would not be the case if I would have said to delete the selected polylines. Now that this is finished, I will zoom out and show you that all of the arcs and curves have remained. Also, if I open my properties menu, you will see that the elevations of the line work is now at elevation 0. Now, if I select all my original line work at once in the 3D view, I can place them all on a separate layer so that I can create a surface and shut the line work off, but still have them as break lines if I need to make adjustments later on. As I have the line work still selected, let's go ahead and add them to a proposed surface as break lines. I'll go ahead and give them a description and edit the mid-ordinance distance to help tighten up my curves in the surface generation. Now that I am done with that, I'll hit enter and you will see that the surface is generated, not affecting my zero elevation line work. Let's orbit around a bit so you can see the survey figure break lines have created a sharp ditch line as well as the roadways. And the final product shows that the surface and the line work, so now you can have easy to work with line work but still utilize the surface. The next tool is the match point styles. Let's start with this Kogel point here. It appears to be a ground shot, but for just a second, let's pretend I put the wrong code in and that point is actually supposed to be a control point. We would start by selecting our match point style command in the ribbon and select the point we would like to match. Make our selection of options to match, and finally, select the point we want to change. As you can see, the point style, label rotation, and if I open the properties menu, you can see even the layer and the point and the label style have all been updated. Let's try another approach with the same tool. Let's look through the same 4 options that we had before, but this time let's skip matching point style and rotation. We will select our point to change. You see the rotation and the point style stay the same. Let's open the properties menu to see how the layer and label style have changed, but the default point style and rotation remain. Let's try one more example. This time around, I will say no to changing everything except for the point style. Once the changes are made, select the point to be changed, and notice that the point style is the only thing that changes.
The next tool that we're going to take a look at is the Station Offset command. We will start by selecting the Station Offset command from the ribbon. Once selected, we will be asked to select a few options in the command line. Would you like labels in model space or paper space, label placement, and label alignment, offsets from alignment? You will then be asked to select inside the active viewport. Would you like to use raw descriptions? Select yes or no. Finally, label insertion scale, station, offset limit. After you make your selections, hit enter and you will see the offsets generate. After completed, you will notice overlap on one side. It's not a problem. We can grab the text and move wherever we would like. Now I'll zoom in so that we can see that the BC and GS labels were generated. We do not need those offsets, so let's take a look at how we can get rid of those. We start by turning off the points we do not want labeled, in this case, curb and ground shots labels. Once we have everything turned off, we will select the station offset command, run through the same prompts and on the command line that we did the last time. For example, I'm using the exact same selection format that I did in the previous example. Labeling in paper space with 60 unit offset. We are also using the raw description for now. Once again, when all the selections have been made, we notice the offset generated. But in this example, we're not going to see all the points that we turned off. In the final example, I will show you how we can label offsets a little differently with our command prompts. I'm still going to label in paper space and use the offset option. The difference here is that I'm going to say no to using raw descriptions. By default, this will use the full description. Once completed, you will notice that the catch basin is spelled out instead of displaying as a raw code of CB. If you're wondering where this comes from, well, it comes from the description key codes set up in the settings panel. These are set up ahead of time to read the survey data that come in from the points. Let's take a look at elevations on a feature line command. Let's just go ahead and select the tool from the custom ribbon at the top of our screen. You will see a dialog box appear with a few different options. For this demonstration, we're going to go with PI and elevation vertices, SW for our point descriptions, and finish up our selections with desired settings. I will go ahead and select the desired line, hit enter. You will notice that points were created at the PIs and the elevation points. Also notice all points are labeled with SW and placed on the same layer. Now let's try placing points at the 15-foot intervals. We will go with the same settings as we did previously. Once we select the line and hit enter, see a point generate along the line every 15 feet. Let's pull these two out a bit, check the distance between the points, and check for our 15-foot distance. You can see that just by eyeballing the end of the arrows, we get 14.89. Once again, let's try the same tool with different selections. This time we'll use the place and selected point option. See, all of our settings are the same again. Select the line. Notice there are no new points. I will now just run along the line and add random points that will take on the elevation of the line at that point. And lastly, we will run through the select Kogo points option. I will take a snip really quick here so that we can use this later. Once my dialog box opens up, I will check the select Kogo points option and set the tolerance. You will see this represented by a magenta line once the process is run. The points within this area are now highlighted, showing they will be edited unless I deselect them. Let's zoom in and compare our points to the snip that we took earlier. Notice that changing our stream bottom affected the surface elevation, and now we can update our stakeout points as well. But what if we still need to edit the stream bottom? Well, let's just use the edit feature line command. For example, we're going to redirect the stream to a new path. Once we select the tool, we see the dialog box that we have all vertices listed and grade and elevations, as well as profile view of the line. Let's select all vertices and change the grades between them. We hit the change command and notice the text and the profile view change to reflect the new grades. Leaving things selected, let's try a couple of other options, like reverse. Let's make a few elevation adjustments to our first point and notice how the changes in the lower window affect the line. I will select the rest of the points and adjust the elevations all at once. Notice the VE at the right of the display box. This is set for your vertical exaggeration scale in the window. If we change this to 1, you will notice that it will adjust the preview window. Let's go ahead and add this feature line to the surface. Since we have a curve in here, we'll tighten up the mid-ordinance distance. Now we can see our surface has changed to follow the feature line. Let's do some adjustments to the feature line and see how it'll affect the surface. Let's select our points and raise them by 10 feet. While we're in here, let's go ahead and select the plot as profile option. Before our profile is created, we'll see a dialog box with a few options asking us to select our surface or our surface styles. We'll hit OK and select the location for the new profile. Once again, let's select our Edit Feature Line tool. We'll grab our feature line. We'll come up here and we'll pick one to add 1 point on the polyline. We'll notice that added a new point in here, and we'll go ahead and edit the elevation. Also, we notice that we have a Pick 2 option in here. We can go ahead and pick 2 points along our polyline. Once those are selected, it's going to come up and show us that both of our points have been added to our list. Let's go ahead and raise this point up by 5 feet. And you'll notice the line in the preview window has changed. Let's go ahead and adjust our vertical exaggeration to 5. You can see that more clearly. As we click different areas in here, you can see the red X appear, and that coincides with the grade in the elevation up above. Let's select a point and change the zoom scale. Notice that you can zoom in or out with the focus remaining on that point. Another tool on the list is the dynamic curb. You can see we have a school with a small parking lot area with some curb. Now, one option we may use is to take these assemblies and create a corridor along this feature line. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try that right now. So let's go to our Home tab, go to our corridor, and let's go ahead and name this corridor here. And then we'll select our feature line option, and then go ahead and select our feature line. And then we're going to get our assembly. Now you can see, once we go in here and we shorten up our increments along our curve to 1 foot so that it tightens up that curve a little bit, we'll hit OK and rebuild the corridor. We're going to get a nice curb line that comes through here. When we get to this corner, we end up with these bow ties. Civil 3D does have an option to clear these bow ties, but we would have to do it to each individual one. Let's try to create that curve that we just did with our dynamic curve tool. This dialog box will just say none for now. Say OK. Select our line. Select which side we want our curve to be on. And then in here we could go through and we could set up all of our settings that we would like, our offsets, our elevation differences, our layers. Now I've already gone in here and created a file. So we'll go ahead and load that one. Say OK. And you can see that we have all our elevations and our layers in place as we'd like them. Say OK to this. And now we can see that our curve popped in. Let's zoom in here and we can see that in this corner we don't have any bow ties. And overall we just end up with nice clean line work. So we take our feature lines and we grab them. We go ahead and we add those to a surface as a break line. We'll add these to the park and curb surface and say OK. Let's zoom out a little bit. And we're going to have to re-invoke this command again. We'll go ahead and say none again. Say OK. But now we'll select this line. We'll select our side. We'll make sure that we have the settings in there that we want. We'll say OK after we add our curve to feature lines as surface. So then you'll notice we get our curve. Well, if we don't get out of the command, we can select another line again. Select the side we want to offset. Select another line. Select the side we want to offset, and then we end up with all of these curves with the same settings. We can grab all these feature lines, right click, add to surfaces break lines, and this will add all of our surface lines or all of our feature lines to this one surface. So let's go ahead and go into our surface and rebuild it. And let's go into our surface properties and turn on our surface so that we can see what we've got. Now you can see the border of our surface. We'll select that and we'll go into Object Viewer. If we zoom in, we can see that we've got a nice sharp edge where all of these curbs are. Now you'll notice that the endpoints of my curbs need a little bit of work as far as the mid-ordinance distance, but we can always adjust that later. Take a look at it in a different view here. So we get a nice sharp edge with the feature lines is the way that they are. Let's go ahead and sharpen up those arcs a little bit. Let's go ahead and delete this surface that we have. Select our lines again and add those to a surface as a break line. We'll use the same surface that we had before. Say OK. We'll go in here and make sure everything's good. We'll put the curve description in for the break lines, and we'll make sure our mid-ordinance distance is set at 0.1. Now we notice that our triangulation is a lot sharper throughout that arc. And our shaded view looks nice and tight. Now let's just say for whatever reason I don't want to show my back curb. So what I do is I go in here and I pick my line file once again, set everything else up how I'd want to, but I go ahead and I set the back curb elevation and the offset to 0. Say OK. And now if I zoom in, you can see that I have all of my line work except for my back to curb. Now let's say that I want to adjust the feature line elevation. I'll go into my newer tools, I'll edit my feature line, I'll select that feature line, and then I'll come in here and I'll say that I want to raise them all by 10 feet. Select them, type in my 10 feet, I hit my raise and lower button. You can see they've been raised. I'll hit OK. Alright. So now if I go back to my dynamic tool, select my original feature line, say curb line modified. After that's been modified, let's go ahead and check the elevations on the back curb now. And see now we're at 10'7" as opposed to 0.7 that we were before.
One tool that we have that's very popular with our engineers that like to use an Excel sheet to calculate their flows in their pipe are our Pipes to Excel tool. We go in and we select our actual Excel sheet that we're going to use. Now this can be any Excel sheet that you normally use on a daily basis anyway. We set all of our columns to match the Excel. We go ahead and either we select by pipe, by alignment, by run. We're going to select by run. Say our CMP run. Go ahead and export that to Excel. And you'll notice that our Excel sheet starts flashing at the bottom. So we'll go into our Excel sheet now, change our pipe sizes to 12 inch, and change them to a 0.32 slope from a 1%. Go ahead and drag that down. And notice that that automatically adjusts our inverts. We'll go ahead and save that. We'll minimize our page and say import to Excel. It comes in and everything adjusts. Let's take another look here. Let's go over to our drop down across the manholes and change those to 3/10. Save that. Say import to Excel, and notice that everything adjusts. Now one more time we'll go ahead and we'll say we want to open up our Excel sheet again. And let's just say we change this one to 0.1 and then the last one to 0.1 and leave the middle one at 0.3. We'll save that. Import to Excel again. Click on the page and notice that everything changes. Once again, if you're comfortable with your Excel sheet, you can use it on any project you would like with this tool. Now you might think Pipes to Excel is a great tool, but you don't use an Excel sheet. That's okay. We've got our pipe editor tool that will make sure that our pipes interact with each other as they're edited in the run. Let's go ahead and select that by run like we did before with the Pipes to Excel. Select our CMP run, which is the only one we have in here. And we're going to go up here and we're going to make sure that all of our slopes are at 0.32. Now let's go ahead and change our drop across our manhole. And change those to 0.2. And we're not going to change the last one because the last one doesn't go anywhere, so we don't really have any reason to change that one. Let's go over and change the size of our pipe to a 12 inch from an 18 inch. We'll change these two, and then we'll go ahead and we'll leave the last one for our outflow structure. And then we'll notice that our drop across our manhole changed a little bit because of the fact that we went to a smaller pipe. So it runs off the center line of pipe. Now you can see all of our pipes have been adjusted. You can see the pipe size difference and the slope difference. Let's go ahead and change an invert. Notice that all the pipes adjust accordingly. They keep that drop across the manholes. They keep the pipe sizes. Let's go ahead and change a structure upstream or a pipe upstream to an 18-inch. Notice that all of them change to 18-inch. This is because we understand that the flow cannot be heavier at the beginning than it is at the end. Let's go ahead and change our slopes back to 0.2. We'll save that. And notice all of our pipes change. Now we can go into the Structures tab. We can see any information that we need to about our structures that are within this run. We have an options menu. We can go from an upstream or downstream. In conclusion, if you would like your pipes to all interact with each other when you edit them, this is the tool you would like to use. The next tool we have available is pipe interference. In this tool, instead of measuring between pipes to figure out what your crossing is and whether or not you meet those limits, this will give you an instant verification with information on that pipe crossing. We can also create a table from this. So we go ahead and we have our defaults, our clearance, our text height, and default pipe size. We have options here. You can see one of them is to make a summary table. So right now we're going to use a detailed block. We're going to say, yes, go ahead and include pressure pipes in here. So we'll hit enter. And notice that we get a full dialog of everything that's crossing here. So we can see that the top of our pipe is a storm pipe is at 769.63. So we can see their clearance of 1.15 meets our minimum requirement of 1 foot. And here's our clearance table. Now if we had multiple crossings, we would see them all here listed. If we go up here to our plan view, we can see that our lettering is in green in our circle. This means that it does meet our minimum requirement. We have the same information up here as we have down in the profile. If that was red, that would mean we don't meet our minimum clearance, which, if you remember right, we set at the very beginning. So let's move on to another part of this pipe interference tool. We can go through here, and here's our minimum clearance that we were talking about. Let's go ahead and set that maybe 3 feet this time. We'll use the same pipes for the crossing. Say OK, and we're going to include our pressure pipes again. We don't have any in this drawing, but we'll say yes anyway. Now, if we go back up here to our plan view, we can see that our information shows that we don't meet our minimum clearance. But also, we can see that this is red now, because our minimum clearance is 3 feet. Moving on, let's try some other options in the pipe interference tool. Let's go ahead and change it to just circle. We'll say yes to our pipes again. And then you'll notice we didn't get the detailed block with all the information. We just got the circle that says, here's your clearance. Here's your crossing and here's your clearance. And they're both red, so we don't meet our minimum requirement. Let's go ahead and try one final option here. This is a non-detailed block crossing option. This just gives us our bottom and our top. It does it both in plan view and in profile, just like before. Shows us our circle, and will also give us our table. The next thing we're going to move on to is spot grades to cocoa points. In here, let's say that we laid out a bunch of labels on the surface that we decided we wanted to do for mass grading. Maybe the engineer laid them out for us, and we've got to turn them into stakeout points. So we go ahead and lay out some surface labels here, just on any spots in general. We're not going to lay out a grid or anything. We'll just close this out, and we'll go in and grab our spot grades to points tool. We're going to go ahead and select all our labels. We're not going to delete our labels. We're going to leave that as it is. And then help. We don't need any help right now. So we're just going to say OK. And you'll notice that all the points are generated where the labels are. But the labels have not disappeared because we decided not to delete those labels. Let's go ahead and try a different option with the same tool. We'll select our spot grades to points. We're not going to select all our labels this time. So we'll put no. And then let's just grab a few of these. We'll just do a little window. Hit enter, and you'll notice that just the ones we selected had points generated. Let's go to spot grades again. We'll go ahead and say delete labels. We're not going to select all our labels again. We'll say OK. We'll window our labels, hit enter, and notice that this time all the Surface labels disappeared after all the points were generated. Another very useful tool that we have is our pond volume by slope tool. Whenever we create ponds, a lot of times we have to offset. We have to go through our Excel sheet and check to make sure that our pond volume is correct. Well, with this tool, what we can do is we can select a 3D polyline or a feature line and select whether or not it's the top or the bottom, select the volume that we want in the pond, select what slope we want that to run on, and select the depth tolerance, which is how close it's going to follow that 10,000 cubic yards. Now, if we notice, we open up our windows here to get our volume. We have 10,168.16. Now, we set it for 10,000 cubic yards, so that's pretty good considering it's a perfect oval. Now, moving on to our last and final tool, the daylight from feature line. As you can see, we have a feature line in here. Let's go ahead and select our daylight. Select our 3D polyline. Now in here, we're going to select what we want our grade from our polyline, our daylight to the right or left, calculate interval, and how many intervals. We're going to leave everything defaulted and say OK. So now you can see we have our daylight coming off the one side. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing again, but we're going to select no so that it does it on the left side. Now you'll notice that we have these red lines on the outside. What are those? Well, those are just basic feature lines that are created right where the daylight shows without any of the grading options. So keep in mind, the next time you need your feature lines at 0 or a pond by volume, they're available through Node Tools.